We're at a rave party, somewhere in the Paris region. The high point of the evening is drugs. Drugs in general, and Rabla in particular. Rabla is the new name for heroin. Today, Rabla is the drug taken at trendy parties. At approximately 50 euros a gram, it's a powerful and almost affordable narcotic. It's being taken everywhere, in all circles.
The day I tried heroin and when I got hooked, it didn't stop me taking coke.
These young people are what is known as multiple drug addicts. They take anything and everything and in large quantities. Alcohol, of course, but also hashish, cocaine, ecstasy, or as in this case, crack.
I didn't want to keep taking coke without knowing I had heroin as a backup. Why? I had enough of going to bed too high, without coke, knowing that if I took some heroin, I'd calm down. So today, I take both of them.
These drugs originate in Afghanistan. That's 90% of world production. The flood of Afghanistani drugs into Europe is worrying the specialists.
Even though on the map or in a documentary, Afghanistan seems far away, which it is, the drugs produced and exported from Afghanistan will kill. They will kill in the seaside resorts of the Baltic, they will kill in Germany, in Finland, and they will kill in France or in Spain. So we have a real problem.
Kabul, the world's heroin capital. Nothing has really changed since the American invasion. This used to be one of Kabul's rivers. Today, it's one of the city's gutters. We met Fahim here. He lives in this wall. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, time for his first hit. In spite of appearances, Fahim is only 28 years old. He started shooting up when he was at the front to get relief from his wounds and from hunger. He goes up to a street seller. He hopes he'll take pity on him. Giving alms to the poor is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Fahim tries again near the mosque. Here, druggies are said to steal the shoes of the faithful as they pray. Their presence here is not appreciated. He's found some money and he's going to buy drugs with a friend. Fahim and his friend go back to the banks of the river, one of the favorite shooting up places for the drug addicts. No one will disturb them here. In the middle of the rubbish and the excrement, the smell is unbearable. Fahim can no longer speak. The drug is coursing through his veins. For a few minutes, he will escape from the hell of withdrawal. Seen from the hills, the misery that is Kabul spreads for as far as the eye can see. The large majority of the population survives on less than 2 euros a day. 1 out of 4 children will not reach the age of 5. And yet in some areas of the city you find dozens of sumptuous houses. Houses worth millions of euros, exhibiting flashy luxury. How can they afford houses like these?
The business, drug trafficking.
Opium, heroin?
Yes, heroin.
Good business.
Heroin's good business. Everyone deals in heroin.
Michel Alliot-Marie, the French Minister of Defense, is on this plane. This is her 8th visit to Afghanistan, where French soldiers are present alongside Americans. And the aim of this particular trip is the fight against drug trafficking.
It seems to me that a lasting stabilization will only be possible when the drug problem has been eradicated. Of course, this is important for every country on our planet, because we know that drugs are a plague that affects populations on all levels. I think it's very important that we concentrate on this. All the more so because a large part of the drug trade is used to provide financing for terrorism.
What we need is long-term international aid.
The man asking for aid is Walid Karzai, the brother of President Ahmed Karzai. Walid Karzai is the head of an important tribe in the region, and according to rumor, he's the biggest drug trafficker in the country.
Just accusing me, it's nothing, no proof.
Has the French minister's message got through? It's not sure. Here, drugs are an ancestral tradition. We are looking for poppy fields. The poppy is the plant from which opium and heroin are produced. We head north. This road links Kandahar to Kabul. It's a strategic road. The workers cut the bulbs one by one. The latex that comes from the poppy is pure opium that will then be made into heroin. The opium will be collected tomorrow morning. The poppy can be harvested twice a year.
Security is very bad here.
What do you mean by security?
The government can't control everything from over there. From where the river is, just over there, the government has no control at all.
Are you afraid of the government or of the Taliban?
We're not afraid of the government. We have good relations with them. But we are afraid of the Taliban. If they knew we were working with the government, they'd kill us.
The next day, we're on the road again. We drive 200 kilometers to the west of Kandahar. This zone is beyond all control of government forces. We meet another peasant named Samir. He's a former Taliban. His poppy plants are dry. Samir harvested his opium over a month ago. Samir is not rich. The money he earns from drugs doesn't go to him. It goes to the Taliban.
The real traffickers, the guys making the money, are the foreign traffickers. I've heard that in the United States, a gram of heroin is more expensive than a gram of gold. Here it's just the opposite.
Samir is going to introduce us to a middleman. Here he is, this man in the blue turban, Habibullah. He says he isn't a drug trafficker, but he seems to be quite knowledgeable on the subject. Before talking to us, Habibullah eats a few poppy grains. It's good for the stomach and for the blood circulation, he says.
That way's Pakistan, over there. And that way's Iran. After Iran, the drugs go to Kuwait, then to Turkey, Bulgaria, then Czechoslovakia. They put them in fruit or soap lorries, or even in cement lorries. And they drive across the desert of sand. Not even a mosquito goes unnoticed here. So a lorry, if they really wanted to stop them, they could.
There are poppy fields all around us, as far as the eye can see. It gives you some idea of the amount of opium produced in this region. The visit continues. Habibullah tells us about an opium market a few kilometers from here. It's a sort of drug stock exchange where the traffickers fix the prices and buy the goods. What risks do we run by going over there?
Only death.
On the way, our protector telephones one of the head men in the market. He introduces us as foreigners who want to buy opium.
I'm at the Mewan Bazaar. I have two guests with me. They want a little information. They are foreign guests. They just want a little info.
This is the Mewan Bazaar. There's never been a camera in here before. Just after we arrive, we notice a man. In his left hand, he's got several kilos of opium. We follow Habibullah with a hidden camera. He too risks death if we get caught. But in spite of the danger, he finds the situation quite amusing. In this sack on the ground, there's more opium. There are drugs everywhere here. We go into a shop. Our man introduces us as prospective buyers. He's being the middleman.
That's opium. Heroin is quite different.
If you find any cheaper, I'll give you 5,000 Afghanis more. You're in the business, aren't you? You know that if somebody doesn't want to, you can't force him. That's business.
Each of these sacks weighs 5 kilos. They sell at 300 euros each. But suddenly, our guide hurries us along. He gives us a sign to get back to the car as quickly as we can. He thinks we've been spotted. We have to go. Habibullah has put us in touch with one of the region's heroin sellers. To be on the safe side, we'll meet him at night. This time, the seller knows that we're journalists, but even so, he's hoping to sell us something. He hasn't come empty-handed. There are 10 kilos of pure heroin in this bag. The dealer's stamp is on the bags. They're all marked with the same stamp, proof that the heroin comes from a single producer. How much for the 10 kilos?
It's $20,000 a bag.
Where do you send it?
We have nothing to do with that. Other people do it. In general, it goes towards Iran. And from Iran, it goes somewhere else. But I don't know where.
Opposite the seller is his son. Clearly, he is completely drugged. Is it difficult to work now?
Yes, it is. If the Americans stop us with that, they'll make things difficult.
You know this is a forbidden substance.
Of course. But we have to do it.
If you didn't deal in drugs, could you make a living?
No, it's impossible. The situation is too difficult.
Do you know that in Europe a lot of people are dying from this?
Everyone has to die one day. Our children are dying too. I'm going to die. It's not my fault.
The seller has understood that we're not buying. We won't find out his boss's name. There's nothing left for us to do but go back to Kandahar. We're back in Kabul. We have an appointment with the Afghan anti-drug police. This is an elite unit working under the DEA, the American Drugs Enforcement Administration that operates throughout the world. An opium treatment laboratory has just been located an hour's helicopter flight to the east of Kabul. We are not authorized to accompany the operation, but a French policeman takes a camera. For this mission, 3 helicopters and around 30 men have been mobilized. Afghans, American, British and French. The laboratory is a simple sheepfold situated at the bottom of a deep valley. By the time the team arrives, the traffickers have fled. It's a bit of a failure for the police. Nevertheless, they have discovered equipment capable of producing hundreds of kilos of drugs. They've also found chemical products and more than 50 kilos of pure heroin ready to be delivered. The men fire their guns at the seemingly inoffensive vats and sacks. They want to make sure the lab hasn't been mined. Then they destroy the installations in order to dissuade the drug traffickers from coming back. The operation is over. The men get back on board the helicopters. They haven't taken any prisoners, but they are bringing the seized drugs back to Kabul for the investigation. All drugs seized in Afghanistan are brought here. This is the Afghanistani Ministry of the Interior. Drug seizures take place almost every day. An enormous quantity of drugs has just arrived from the north of the country. They were taken by the Afghan police force, 450 kilos of opium and 150 kilos of heroin. Each of these sacks weighs more than 20 kilos. In the cells, there are tons of opium, hashish and heroin worth millions and millions of dollars.
There's a kilo of heroin here.
How many kilos of heroin are there in this cell?
More than 1,500 kilos. This is the dealer's stamp. Each dealer has his own stamp.
Before being stored away, the sacks are sealed, in theory so that the seized drugs are not resold. The cell is then closed off, but the seals on the padlocks are pretty rudimentary. A simple strip of glued paper. Who are the men behind this huge trafficking ring? We find a lead in Kabul. We have an appointment in a safe house. The man arrives alone, without a bodyguard. He introduces himself as the head of a network. This is an extraordinary contact.
Why are you closing the curtains?
Because I'm going to talk to you about heroin.
He had no scruples in showing us this video. He wants to show the Westerners the quality of his work, to do a little publicity.
I made the film on this cassette. The reason the government doesn't really put a stop to the drug traffic is that all the people in high positions are implicated. During the Taliban regime, there wasn't a single laboratory in Afghanistan. They only existed in Pakistan. Now there's some here. Opium and heroin are made here. Foreigners and even Afghans take them. This is a lab that the Americans and the government destroyed by helicopter. You see, the helicopters destroyed everything. So the guys just set up again a little further down. They set up another lab. In this film, I explain how we make heroin from opium. Opium is sent to the labs, sometimes by donkey. Then in the lab, the opium is put into cans of 7 kilos of opium per can. Then, all you have to do is heat it over a fire. That's the guy who does the mixing. And here, the product is being pressed with a car jack. And you see that brown solution on the ground? Well, that's already heroin. So the buyers come from Kabul or elsewhere, and then they sell all this abroad. More and more frequently it goes to Tajikistan because there are laboratories in Dushanbe, the capital. You can still get through the Iranian border, but it's difficult now.
Is the Iranian border really so difficult for the traffickers to get through? We decided to go find out. Our first stopover is Herat, near the Iranian border. Herat is the country's most beautiful city. It's also the most commercial. We have a meeting here with Major Tony Oliver, the American Army's liaison officer with the Afghan Customs.
Sunny Herat, the garden spot of Afghanistan. And I am lucky enough to spend a lot of time, if you will, out and about doing my job. But as for any kind of those things where you might really get to know the culture, I just don't have one, the freedom to do that, and or two, the time to take part in that kind of activity. We work very long hours, and it's every day's a Monday kind of a deal out here.
Trade passing through Herat is worth 3 billion euros. 3/4 of this comes from the drug trafficking.
As you can see here on both the left and right side of the highway, the last kilometer coming into the city of Herat, just the sheer magnitude, the ocean or the sea of trucks and different types of goods that are brought into Afghanistan from Iran. Essentially, it's all based on trade. There is no cash. The cash it's not a cash flow kind of a situation, whereas a place like Colombia, for example, you could always track the money. Here in Afghanistan, it's not done with money. It's done by trade. For example, we'll take this truck over here to the left over here that has the, looks like some sort of grain with 2 trucks on top. Well, let's just say that he was a drug smuggler. He made it a deal at a cafe somewhere that, hey, for 200 kilos of opium, I need 2 cars and 16 tons of rice. And that would be the trade. And here it comes. Boom, there it is. And 2 months or a month later, maybe a week later, here comes the trade.
Tony can do nothing against the smuggling. His is an anti-drug mission.
The way we got it figured, at least a ton of opium crosses this border every single day. And that's in various ways, shapes, and forms.
Tony has only 2 American colleagues to help him. He has 200 Afghani counterparts, but they have to watch over 1,200 kilometers of border.
Line is now, at least we're enforcing the law, where before they weren't enforcing the law at all.
On the day we met, Tony had a very important guest with him, Frau Doris Budenberg, the head of the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime. She is accompanied by General Rahman, the Chief of Border Police for the Afghanistani frontiers. This is a very official visit.
I mean, I really admire the courage for taking on this responsibility in this area where one hardly sees a solution. Yeah, take a picture of the car. Absolutely. Yes. Please. Please, yes, take a picture of the car.
This is the first time that Doris Budenberg has come here, but she knows the enemy she's dealing with very well.
If law enforcement starts to focus on big laboratories, the drug industry will respond by creating many small laboratories. Thus, the adaptability of the industry is enormous. Traffickers are not only well equipped but also well informed. And have all the money they want at their disposal. I think that's common knowledge. So are we winning or losing the war? At least we have a chance.